Hi and welcome back to The Books Are Everywhere. So it is the 1st of April, which means it is time for my March wrap-up. I actually managed to read 10 books in March, which is probably not quite as much as I wanted if I'll be honest with myself. But you know, you just have some months where you just need to focus on other things, and I just couldn't use my time for reading, sadly. I also think that's going to be the case for the next couple of months, so audiobooks will hopefully help a little bit, but I'm honestly running out of books on my TBR that I can get as audiobook versions on Scribd, which is a shame. So I'm struggling there as well. But hopefully I'll manage to still keep up this kind of pace in the next few months. But with me coming to the end of my degree at university, I am struggling with using my spare time to actually not do work and not do other things rather than reading. But hopefully I'll manage to read it a little bit more in April with the magical readathon, which I'm very excited for. But I read 10 books in March, which is still a pretty good number with everything that I'm doing at the moment as well, and with March being quite a busy month. I am still happy with 10 books. I would have liked to have pushed it to 1 or 2 more, but 10's pretty good. 10 is pretty good anyway, so I am going to dive into the books that I read in March. Some of these are stupidly I've already put at the top of my bookcase and I can't be bothered, bluntly, to get them down for this video, so I will put a picture of the cover here because these bookcases are quite high, so it's really awkward. I have to stand on something to get them down. But I have all of the rest of them, so there's only a couple. So let's start with the first book I actually read in March, which was The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. I can't say too much about this because it is the second book in the Poppy War series, and this one was one I did manage to read on audiobook. I've read the whole series on audiobook, and I did start reading this one physically, and I just couldn't get into it like I could the audiobook. I think as well, once you've listened to these, because there is a lot of names in here because this is based on Chinese history, there's a lot of names in here that I would pronounce differently reading them, so it's really helpful to actually have the audiobook there. And I found it really hard to switch between them, so I would recommend the audiobooks. They really do draw you in. But yeah, I can't say too much about this one. It is more kind of war, political, high fantasy. So if you do enjoy that kind of thing, then I would recommend this series. But beware that there is a lot of trigger warnings for these books. They do focus obviously on war, so there is some kind of scenes of genocide. I would say there's some more specific trigger warnings for the first book. And I don't have a list for this one, but it does kind of continue on that trajectory that there is kind of war and violence, and it is quite graphic in places, so just beware if you are going to go into this one. I will be carrying on with this series, but I don't think I'm going to purchase the last book. I think I will just listen to the audiobook of it because that is what I did with the other two, so I will probably do that. But I did enjoy this, but not as much as the first one. I would say I liked it, and I will carry on with the series. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but there was a lot more that I would enjoy about this if it was written slightly differently. I loved the start of the Poppy War. It had this kind of everyday scenes of Rin, the main character, in this kind of magical academy, which I absolutely loved, and I loved that kind of environment. So these kind of war heavy books aren't quite for me, but I would recommend it if you do enjoy things like that. But yeah, I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. I then read Greenwich Park by Catherine Faulkner, and this is a thriller set in Greenwich in London, and this one was so good. My mom actually finished this one today and she loved it too. She was literally reading the end of it over her lunch because she couldn't put it down and she just wanted to find out what was going to happen. And yeah, I would highly recommend this one as well. It was just so gripping. It follows Helen, who is a pregnant woman who goes to these NCT classes, and she meets Rachel there, who is another pregnant lady, and they kind of become friends. But then Helen realizes that Rachel kind of knows a lot of things about her and also trying to kind of follow her maybe, or copy the things that she's doing. So it was a little bit, something creepy is going on there. This one honestly kept me hooked till the last page. It has so many twists and turns. If you like a thriller, I would recommend it, but I don't read that many thrillers. I was just drawn into this one and I really loved it, so I would very much recommend it. It was 4 out of 5 stars from me. and my mom. I then read The Last Firefox by Lee Newberry, which I don't actually have my copy anymore, but this was a middle grade book that was just so cute and I absolutely loved it. Follows our main character who goes up to this castle in this Welsh town that he lives in, and he comes across this doorway to another world, and through that doorway he's given a magical fox that actually sets himself on fire whenever he gets emotional, which was, he then has to kind of like hide this fox and deal with having this fox with him and looking after this fox, and it was just so cute and had so many morals to the story, which I really loved. As it's a middle grade, it was a really easy one to read as well, and I loved the writing style. It was very much that cozy children's book that also had these really kind of interesting and important themes kind of woven throughout about friendship and family, and being there for other people and being strong and brave, and I just loved that. It was so cute. I would really recommend it, and I gave that one 4 out of 5 stars too. I then read Endgame by Mallory Blackman, which is one of the ones that is on the top of my bookcase, so I won't be getting that down, but I will put a cover here for this book. It is the last one in the Noughts and Crosses series, the 6th and final book, I believe, unless she decides to bring out any more all of a sudden. But yeah, I finally picked this one up. Mark bought it for me for Christmas, and I finally finished this series after starting it quite a few years ago now, but I really enjoy the last 2 books in this series. They definitely do kind of grow up as the series goes on. They definitely do kind of grow and change as the series goes on, and I did see kind of a writing development, and I also really like how Mallory Blackman manages to kind of keep these discussions that she has about race throughout the books really fresh and feels very relevant to the real world with these specific scenarios that are happening within the books. This one was another page turner. I didn't read it quite as quickly as I did Crossfire because I honestly read that in just over a day. It was so quick. And I can't say much about this because it is the 6th book in the series, but we follow some of the characters from earlier on in the series as they are kind of later in life. They're all in these kind of intense situations that they're trying to kind of find their way out of, but I can't really say a lot more than that. It is very tense and intense and will keep you hooked and keep you interested till the last page. I would recommend it if you have maybe read the initial books in the series a while ago. I wasn't necessarily intending to pick these last 2 books up, but I'm glad I did because I really enjoyed them, and I gave this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. I then picked up Lulu and Milagros' Guide to... No, it's not Guide to Fake Dating. Oh, I get these mixed up. So Hanny and Ishi's Guide to Fake Dating and Lulu and Milagros' Search for Clarity. I get the titles just completely mixed up, which is a completely different book, but an also amazing book. But this is Lulu and Milagros' Search for Clarity, which is following 2 sisters. I read this one on audiobook and I did quite enjoy this one. It is great if you're looking for this kind of road trip book that is perfect for summer. It is quite light-hearted, it's not too serious. It follows these 2 sisters as they are visiting different colleges around the United States, and they're travelling from their hometown with their school and just going and experiencing these different colleges. The sisters are quite different, and I did see myself more in Lulu. This one does read a little bit young, and I did find it quite young in some of the language that they were using and their kind of attitudes and stuff. So I would say that if you don't mind that, then maybe pick this one up. But I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I would recommend it if you like the sound of it, but it wasn't quite for me in some ways, but I'm glad I picked it up. And also thank you to Harper360 for sending me a copy of this one. I then picked up Tide Song by Wendy Zhu, which is, again, on the top of my bookcase, so I'm not going to get it down right now, but this one was so cute. This is another middle grade book, but it's actually a middle grade graphic novel, and I adored it. It is so sweet. It follows Sophie, who is she is kind of a witch. She has magic, and she is sent to live with her relatives, I think it's her aunt and cousin, in this beautiful seaside town to learn magic so she can get into this magic school. And when she's there, she's actually put to work doing more chores than she thought, and more chores than magic. So she tries to kind of use the magic and teach herself magic instead, and something kind of goes wrong where she ends up summoning this kind of water dragon. I can't remember what they're actually called, whether they're called water dragons or not, and kind of has to deal with the consequences that comes with that happening. This one was so cute. I loved it. I love the illustrations. I would highly recommend it if you're a fan of Studio Ghibli or Kiki's delivery service in particular, because the art style did really remind me of that, and it was just so adorable and I really liked it, so I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I then picked up Message Not Found by Dante Medema, and this was another one that was sent to me by Harper 360, so thank you to them for sending me this book. This one and Lulu and Malagra are both out now, I believe, and I really enjoyed this book. It was so good. I was really intrigued by this because it follows a girl whose best friend dies at the start of this book, and she's trying to find out what happened to her and why she ended up driving up this mountain pass where she actually died while she was driving. And while she's trying to find out what happened to Vanessa, she actually uploads all of the messages that she ever exchanged with her. And she uploads them to this kind of like AI chatbot and starts talking to this chatbot. And while talking to this chatbot, she actually discovers more things about Vanessa and why she might have ended up going up the mountain pass that day and ended up dying. This one was so interesting. I was really intrigued to see where it went. It was slightly less of a kind of thriller that I was expecting, more of kind of like a heartfelt discussion about grief, about friendship, and about how you deal with this kind of thing happening to you as a teenager. And it really touched me in ways that I didn't expect. It did make me quite emotional, and I really liked a lot of it. It was really good. I gave it 4.5 stars. I think the 0.5 was really just because it wasn't quite what I expected, but I did really enjoy it. I then picked up The Lighthouse Switches by CJ Cook. This was a proof copy that was sent to me by HarperCollins last year, and I finally got around to reading it, and I actually listened to the audiobook of this one too, and it was really enjoyable. This one is following a family who go to this remote island in Scotland where there's kind of mysterious things going on, and they don't really know kind of what's happening, and they live in this lighthouse. So it kind of flicks between then in 1998 and in 2021, following one of the daughters of this family as she's trying to find out kind of what happened to her sisters after they went missing all those years ago. And it was really cleverly interwoven. I really liked all of the main characters. I really liked the family aspect of this one, and I actually really liked where it was leading as well and how it ended, which I really didn't know where it was going to end, but I really liked the kind of ending where it came to. It was very dark, it was very haunting. I would highly recommend the audiobook because having a full cast was just brilliant, and I'm really glad they did it with a full cast. I thought that worked really well. But Jo has also read this, my friend Jo, and she's really enjoyed it too. I think she listened to the audiobook as well, but I'm not 100% sure. I think she had a NetGalley arc on audio. But yeah, I did really enjoy this, and I would really recommend if you are looking for a kind of haunting tale set on the remote islands of Scotland, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I then read The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. I would like to have read these both in kind of like October, Halloween time, but I was just running out of audiobooks, so I ended up listening to these. And this one was quite good as well. I did actually quite enjoy this one. I wasn't sure because I've heard quite mixed opinions and reviews on this one, but I quite enjoyed it. I liked the audiobook. It was very quick to read. I reckon it would have been the same if I'd have read it physically. I think it would have been really quick. It follows Clara, who's an Everwitch in a world of witches that actually have seasonal magic, so they're either spring, summer, autumn or winter, so she is quite rare, and this actually grants her a lot of power. And while she's been using this power, she's actually hurt some of the people around her and lost some of the people around her as well. And this book basically follows her kind of having this inner battle with her magic, and basically doesn't want to hurt anybody else, and the way that her magic kind of makes her emotions change each season. And I did really like it. It was quite young and a bit cringy in places, but I did still really enjoy it, and I'd highly recommend it if you're looking for something like this, and if you don't mind a little bit of a younger voice and a little bit of naivety, and if you like the Twilight series, because it did honestly remind me of the Twilight series in some ways, with the romance and with the kind of younger voice to it. But I did still really enjoy it. I'm glad I read it on audio as well because I thought it was really good. So I gave this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. And then I picked up The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O. I was super excited for this one because I absolutely love XOXO by the same author, which I read last year, but it is a very different book to this. That one is a contemporary book, a contemporary romance, whereas this one is a fantasy book, which I still enjoyed, but this one it did disappoint me a little because I loved XOXO so much. I think it would have been really hard for me to feel the exact same way about a book that was so different. This is a very kind of intricately weaved mystical and magical fantasy that is following this girl called Mina as she actually falls beneath the sea, chasing after her brother who is chased after his beloved, and she falls into this spirit realm where she actually has to save the sea god. As I said, this was a very intricately weaved fantasy that had kind of notes of Spirited Away, of Studio Ghibli, and also kind of reminded me of Pixar movies like Coco and like Raya and the Lost Dragon, or Last Dragon, I can never remember. And I did quite enjoy it by the end, but it did take me most of the book to really get into it and to really kind of understand what was going on, because it is quite complicated. And for that reason I'm giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. There was a lot of aspects I really enjoyed. I just wanted that to be more kind of balanced throughout the book rather than just in the kind of last 100-ish pages was like where it really got going for me and where I really kind of wanted to pick it up, whereas before I just kind of didn't. So I would recommend it depending on what you're looking for and what you like in a fantasy book, but if you like that kind of like intricate, magical, mystical fantasy, then I would recommend it, but just go into it with that kind of expectation, I would say. So that's all the books I read in March. I would say it was kind of a good month for me in the sense that I didn't necessarily dislike any of these books, but I don't think I had a 5-star in there. There was a few that I really enjoyed, but a lot of these books were ones that I just liked or really liked rather than absolutely loved or blew me away. But it was still a pretty good month. There was none that I disliked really. So I'm gonna wrap it up here. I'm sorry about the lighting in this video. The sun's just kept going in and out throughout the whole thing, which has just been really annoying, especially with the amount of natural light I have coming into this room. So I hope that hasn't been too annoying and that you've still enjoyed this video all the same. And I will see you next time in another video.